Before I was a pharmacist, I wouldn't have had any idea about what pharmacists really go through and do at their jobs. And I would only think about, like, why aren't they doing this?
That is Soojin Jun, the guest for today's episode. In today's episode, you'll hear Soojin share the story of when she struggled to empathize with a healthcare worker tending to her ailing father. She also reflects on the anger and sadness she felt to witness her father's passing. Not an easy topic to discuss in a public forum. Join me in holding space for Soojin to reflect honestly. Welcome to the journey of realizing empathy. I think we all have experienced the moment in our lives when we suddenly empathize with somebody we previously did not by experiencing a moment of realization. One where we went, aha, oh, or maybe even burst out with laughter concerning something we either did not or had incorrectly assumed to understand and appreciate enough. While these realizations can sometimes be had in a few minutes, it can also take years. In fact, it may never happen. It is a seemingly simple yet complex and lifelong process of realizing empathy that I wish to explore in all of our episodes. Hey there, listener. My name is Slim. I help startup founders in their maturation as a leader and a CEO by helping them confront themselves in a true mirror. And I believe few things serve as a truer mirror than the challenges we face in our interactions with other people. The Journey of Realizing Empathy is a show where we explore how our challenges with other people can ultimately serve as a true mirror that helps us mature as leaders and human beings. In each of our episodes, we host a guest who tells a story of a time in their life when they struggled to empathize with one or more people until a series of realizations moved them to empathize with those very people. Welcome, Soojin.
Thank you for having me, Soojin.
Would you be willing to briefly introduce yourself?
My name is Soojin. I'm a pharmacist, patient advocate, and I really believe in empathy. I believe in the power of empathy so much that I'm so enthusiastic about it.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for your willingness to even come on our show, because I think we live in an era where empathy has become weaponized, and we judge and shame people for lacking empathy. So to come on a show willing to share a time in your life when you struggle to empathize with someone is not easy. So I do not wish to take that for granted. So I wanted to fully acknowledge that. So, all right, let's get started. So before we began the recording, I briefly asked you who were these people that you were struggling to empathize. And the gist of the matter was the journey could take anywhere all the way back to your teenage years to the present moment. So this is a fairly involved and complex journey that you're going to share today. So let's set the stage for the people who are listening. Take us back to wherever you believe the beginning of the story is, and let's start from there.
So I don't really know, or I cannot pinpoint exactly when it started. I feel showing emotions for others is a sign of empathy, and I feel crying is one of them. And although many or not everyone would agree with that, because people can fake crying and different things. But when I say crying, it's a real crying. It's feeling for another's sadness, anger, and fear. And I had difficulty doing that when I was feeling sad, when I was in funeral.
When was this?
This was around teenage year. Okay. I would say around 16. Okay-ish. I'm not 100% sure. But I realized that I had difficulty doing that. And I think part of it was that my heart was filled with coldness of some sort, that I cannot really move my heart or feelings. And I'm a Catholic, and I started praying about it.
When you were 16?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wanted to cry when I'm sad. I can laugh when I'm happy or joyful, and why can I cry when I'm sad? So I pondered about it, and I started praying, and I think I prayed for about 7 years.
Wow.
So
Because you were constantly unable to cry during that time.
Right.
Wow.
I came to United States when I was in high school with my brother.
How old are you?
I was 14.
Oh, wow. Okay. So 16 was only 2 years afterwards.
Right. It was very difficult, and I didn't have my parents with me. So it was just my brother and me, and we were...
The two of you moved to the US, and your parents were still, where were they?
My mom moved to Japan when we moved to United States, and my dad was in South Korea.
Oh, wow. Wow. That alone could not have been easy.
Right. And we were hopping place to place, from relatives to relatives.
For place to stay.
Right. I had uncle in New Jersey. We lived there for 2 years, and we went to California where my aunt lives. So that journey was very hard.
Wow. How long of a time period was that in your life?
I would say about 5 years.
So 5 years of constantly moving from relative to another relative.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. Then we settled in Chicago. So that's when my dad came over.
Okay. Okay.
But during that 5 years, it was very hard.
Wow. I mean, not just hard in the sense that you're moving from place to place, but if you think about your age, this is time where you want to be socially relating with friends, having some sense of stability with relationships, things of that sort. That could not have been easy.
And of course, the language barrier.
Oh, that's right. That's even yet another layer.
Right?
Yeah.
And not having parents, or you're in an unfamiliar place.
Yeah.
Where you feel alone and not supported. It was a very difficult time. And I think that was the time that I really could not cry from that time.
So the fact that you were in a time of your life where you had just moved to the US and you didn't have a stable support structure of whether it's adults or peers, that was a time where you recognized that you felt like there's something blocking you from crying.
Right. Right. And then another difficult period came, and that's when I was taking care of my dad.
Oh, who had just arrived in the US?
Well, it was a little after that. So he was diagnosed with stage 3 esophageal cancer. It's a cancer in esophagus.
How old were you at the time?
I was 13, 14 years ago. So I would say about 30.
Oh, okay. So we're fast forwarding about almost 15 years. Okay, great.
Yeah. So my dad experienced a lot of gaps of care in the United States. We were relatively healthy and never had to experience healthcare in general. And all of a sudden, he's diagnosed with complex disease that he has to see multiple specialists and caregivers, and it was just so difficult. I cannot fathom going back to that time period, to emergency department visits because of low sugar he experienced from the insulin that he was on. So on top of cancer, he was diagnosed with diabetes as well. So, he had to be tested 5 times for blood sugar, and we were going to seek care in South Korea because he was disappointed with the care that he was getting. He was not getting better.
Yeah.
So we booked our flight, and a week before our flight, he had a severe abdominal pain.
Oh.
And we had to go to emergency again, and that's where he passed away. That was really life-changing event for me. And I was interested in healthcare, but that event was really a decisive moment for me to pursue pharmacy because of how he died. And it's possible multiple hypoglycemic events can lead to early death. And I don't know the exact cause, but my guess is that might have been the part of why.
Not just the cancer, but the diabetes part.
Right. The cancer was pretty stable. The doctor was very surprised that he just all of a sudden passed away. And this is very common problem for patients with multiple comorbidities.
Oh, so you became a pharmacist to change healthcare?
Yeah, I wanted to. I was so eager, and all of a sudden I felt like I had to do something for patients like my dad, minority patients, and people with language barriers and cultural barriers. Their stories were not someone else's anymore. It was like mine.
Yeah. Let's pause there for a second. And before I ask my next question, I just want to check in. What emotions do you feel right now?
I am angry. I am angry. And sad. I think anger and sad is just paper thin difference, I would say. A lot of times I think people who are angry, they have sadness in their heart. I would cry at job interviews. It was very bad.
Wow.
Embarrassing. And embarrassing because the first question people would ask me was, why did you go to pharmacy school? And I had to tell my story. Why? I had to be honest, and that, I don't know, it became very embarrassing afterwards, but I think it does touch people's heart that way because I'm being honest, and they can really feel my pain that way. You can empathize with me because I talked about crying because of me crying. Some people would cry with me at job interviews.
What was it like to watch other people cry with you during job interviews?
I was glad that I was able to touch someone's heart that way. And I felt cared. I felt like this could be a person I could work with, or at a job interview, you think about a lot of things. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not just a matter of whether you have a professional fit or not. Is this the kind of person that I want to work with? Because this is not just a job for me. I want to work with people who actually care, who actually resonate.
Yeah, and I feel healthcare it's such a difficult job. After I became a healthcare professional, I realized I empathize with healthcare professionals as well. Before I was a pharmacist, I wouldn't have had any idea about what pharmacists really go through and do at their jobs. And I would only think about, like, why aren't they doing this? Why aren't they doing
what?
that?
Doing what? Give us an example.
For example, because my dad had esophageal cancer, he couldn't eat. When he was in hospital, he could only drink fluids. He was cold, so we asked for a tea. And it took a nurse 45 minutes to bring a tea.
Which is a long time.
Right. And, because that was the only thing he could take or eat or drink, whatever you would call. I felt not heard or not understood how significant that tea was.
Yes, yes, yes.
It was, I don't know, it was everything in a way.
Yeah, which is completely justified. Yeah, I mean, I think anybody would feel that way in that moment when your entire life is at stake, and even in something as seemingly simple as bringing tea, that's the only way in which a person, a live human being, can sustain their life through food and nutrition. Somebody denying tea is not denying tea. It's denying their livelihood. It's denying that their right to matter. It's denying their right to exist, basically, in some ways. And to have that be violated in front of your eyes as you being a caregiver in your own right at the time, to witness that lack of support, similar to what you were describing earlier, the healthcare people not having support. You were also a healthcare giver who were not receiving support from fellow healthcare givers. And that's definitely understandable. And I don't think anybody would not appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that, by the way.
Yeah,
it was not easy to say.
Right. And I clearly still remember that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's strange how things just remain in your memory.
It was an important moment.
Yeah, it was not too long after his diagnosis.
Oh, it was very fresh too then. Absolutely, absolutely. But it sounds like the journey that you took to healthcare has somehow, now I want to use this word too lightly, but transformed your perspective. Is that true?
I would agree, yeah. Now I know how difficult nurse's job is. Because I see it every day.
Yeah.
I can see why it takes 45 minutes. But before that, I was just sad about not being heard, not being understood as a caregiver and patient. And I feel there's very little appreciation overall from leaders and management. I feel healthcare professionals have standards to meet. Yeah. And even the slightest mistake can hurt patients. Yeah. So we are watched carefully by patients, and there's no second person to check on you. Think about that pressure. You're signing off your name on things, and someone else's life can be dependent on you. That's a lot. And if there is no support from management and leadership, you very well feel alone. And it's such a busy environment, where healthcare workers take care of patients. They really have no time for self. I used to work at retail pharmacy for a while, and we don't even have time to eat or go to the bathroom. And you have to think about patient safety. That is my passion, patient safety, because of how my dad passed away. That naturally became my passion. But in that kind of setting, you cannot practice safety.
I can viscerally feel the amount of appreciation you now have for healthcare workers. You're talking about not only their individual weight that they're carrying, the burden of responsibility of, there's nobody else to share this responsibility with. I'm completely accountable for the well-being and potential death or other high stakes events for the patients that I take care of. So I'm naturally driven to strive for high levels of standards, excellence, whatever I can do to make sure I meet that requirement. But at the same time, the external pressure is such that I have to watch not only one patient, but who knows how many patients I have to watch. And there are time limits as to how many of those I have to tend to in a given day or a given shift or whatever the duration of time may be. And basically, I'm mostly forced to sacrifice myself in the sense that I cannot eat, I cannot go to the bathroom, my basic needs are shoved to the side because there are no other ways in which I can do this given the lack of support. Right? So for you to arrive at this moment of such deep appreciation for both what's going on in the lives of healthcare workers and also viscerally feeling the kind of burden and all those things that you felt.
Yeah, it was not an easy journey, very difficult. Going to pharmacy school was very difficult for me.
What was it like?
I slept 3 hours a day.
So they were preparing for the reality. So they're like, once you get out, you're not going to sleep at all. So might as well sleep 3 hours.
Yeah, I was raising 2 children.
Oh, wow.
I was pregnant with my second one when I started taking prerequisites. And I was going part-time because during the day I would watch kids and at night I would go to school. And normally it would just take people 2 years to finish the prerequisites, but it took me 4 years. And then the pharmacy school itself, it was full-time I had to do. And I would come home and help my kids' homework, and I would start my work at 11 p.m.
Yeah.
I sometimes would just sleep in front of the computer and go to school straight. Yeah, it was not, I don't think I can do it over. Even if someone pays me lots of money. Yeah.
Oh my God.
But I think it was worth it. That I'm able to help patients, and it made me better able to empathize as well with patients and healthcare professionals, I think.
How did it help you better empathize with patients?
I don't know if you're familiar with what patient advocate is, but the work that I'm doing is essentially being a private care manager. You help managing medications, you go home to patients' home, and you go to outpatient visits, doctor's appointments, labs, wherever patients go, you would go.
Wow.
Make sure that patient is safe.
Was there anything in this journey that you learned new about the patient's experience that you were unfamiliar or did not know in the past?
Oh, there's tons of ones.
Say some more.
Like I didn't realize how difficult mental health world is.
How did you think about it beforehand?
Mental health is even more fragmented than what you would imagine. So if you think about how mental health is treated and like what needs to be done to be treated, you need a counselor or a psychotherapist that you can work with. And it has to match with you. You do need that for other illnesses too. And when it comes to mental health, it's a very different ballgame. You need a very good match, because you need a long-term relationship. It's like marrying someone. So that journey itself is very difficult, very expensive.
But I just want to make sure that we put a little bit of contrast so we can better understand the difference between how you now appreciate it and what was it like in the past when you didn't know? What was mental health perceived differently beforehand for you personally?
I guess I didn't even think about it at all.
It was not even on your radar.
Right. I didn't even think about it. But when I look at patients who go through mental health illness and the journey of getting sober and getting out of addiction is so difficult. I would say it's a miracle if somebody gets well in this country from mental health. That's how complex it is and how difficult it is for mental health patients. There's more awareness nowadays, but simply providing more mental health care is not going to solve the problem.
Say more. Why do you think so?
Why? Because there's just so many things. Cost is, I would say, number one reason that many cannot seek mental health care. It's so expensive, first of all. And many patients with mental health cannot get a proper job to begin with. So then how can they afford insurance? How can they even seek care?
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy where like they're not given the support and then they're blamed for not doing well.
Exactly. And it needs a community as well. And I feel there's this consensus that people would agree that people are lonelier and people are more alone. In order for people to get better mental-wise, you need a community to belong to.
Yeah.
And if that's not being done, just providing mental health workers is not going to do anything.
How did your perception of the importance of community change before you recognized the importance of community for patients and now? What would the meaning of community been, say, when you were 16 or 20?
I didn't have a chance to meet communities. I worked. My uncle had a business, so I worked right after school. I didn't have a chance to meet any friends or do any activities like my peers would. And I had this language barrier. So I think at that time I slept 3 hours too.
I sense a pattern.
Yeah. So I worked very hard.
Yeah. No, I can tell.
And I intentionally wanted to learn English so fast and so much that I intentionally avoided hanging out with Korean friends.
Yeah. I think that's fairly common. Yeah.
But I don't know if I should have.
I think the important point that you're drawing upon is you valued community when you were young, and even and also especially after you've gone through this journey of transformation and have learned about what the patients are going through. But the response when you were younger was, even though there may be some longing for community deep down, I've got more important things to do. Let's say I got to learn my language, I got to do X, Y, Z. These are my priorities. So I'm willing to sacrifice the lack of community for these things because these are my priorities. Whereas, and once again, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like now the priority has somewhat shifted where you're saying like, ooh, without community, everything else seems secondary. Is that true? Am I understanding you right?
Yeah, I think so. In a way, I would agree.
There's some hesitation. Say more.
Because I guess I didn't look at it that way before. Yeah.
And what's the significance of this way of looking at the situation for you?
I thought about moving out of this country so many times. I know you had the spectrum on your slide or on your front page of your website. You have that journey of empathy, and I wondered if I have too much that spectrum. Am I at the end of it that I feel like I'm taking too much into me? I sometimes wonder that.
And what's the significance if you were doing that?
I don't know if I can pinpoint or say it in a word, but I feel that gratitude from many patients
Yeah.
that I interact with. I guess there's mistrust of some level for healthcare professionals from patients. And when I share what I feel, especially since I'm a patient advocate, I interact with a lot of patients and caregivers who were hurt or who lost loved ones.
Yeah.
And I get, like I said, I get angry with them,
Yeah.
and they see that, and we become friends.
Yeah.
Like no other. We haven't spent that much time, but we already have bonds. And I experienced that many times with patients. So although I'm a healthcare professional and initially they may have mistrust, I feel I get connected to patients very well because of how I feel about patients.
So is it like an inner conflict between you wondering, am I empathizing too much in certain situations? But on the other hand, the way you are carrying yourself throughout the journey actually enables other people in distress to be able to connect with you because of this. And as a result, they find value in that relationship and enough that they are expressing gratitude towards you.
Yeah. I'm grateful for what I experienced. Although I could be at the end of the spectrum of empathy, I don't mind it. I'm grateful for that journey, and I think it was a gift that I got from my dad. As painful as it is, still, there's this contradicting feelings about it. Painful, but you're also grateful. I think a lot of things in life are like that.
Yeah, but it sounds like you're able to reflect on your experience with your father as a gift, in that you were able to, for lack of a better term, get something out of the experience. You not only lost your father, but you also gained something from that experience that you're now able to, channel it through and actually for positive benefit to many people that you're working with. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Actually, Gain was my father's name.
Oh, really? wait, really? What?
Interesting you use that word.
Wait, how does that work?
Yeah, that was his name.
Wow. So did that occur to you in the past, like the idea of Gain being his name?
Oh, that's interesting.
Oh, wow. Wow. Oh my gosh. It's fascinating when something becomes personal. Right? It instills in us a sense of mission, a sense of purpose, a commitment, and all those things. At the same time, similar to what you were saying earlier, that also means the weight is heavier. Because you're taking on a lot of responsibility. You want to make sure you do the best and be the best. And everything has to be the best, because you wouldn't let yourself to do or be otherwise. That just means living short of your own expectations of yourself. So I would imagine, even though this journey is fruitful, it's not easy for you. What do you find most challenging about navigating this journey?
Sometimes you feel very alone. You feel like you're barking at a wrong tree.
Say a little more example of what do you mean by barking up the tree?
No matter how hard you try, you don't see a change.
No impact.
Yeah. The impact. But recently I was able to meet with great people who are in patient safety. And the organization is called Patient Safety Movement Foundation, which is in California. I met a lot of great people in that foundation. And also I was able to go to an experience called Telluride Experience that many renowned patient safety experts teach students were there. So I was able to connect with them and work with them, volunteer with them. I just learned so much from them. And I feel when you are passionate and it just comes out of your body naturally, and you don't really have to explain, and they can see it. And a lot of things like that I experienced, the people who got hurt by medical harm, or caregivers who experience medical harm, like we don't have to explain. Like we know how that feels. Just that empathetic space that we can have, I just feel that's so precious. Mm-hmm. And when I felt that I'm not alone in that space, I think being alone is just so scary for me.
Oh, it would be for everybody.
Yeah. So when I had that experience, I felt courageous. And I felt that I can voice better, louder.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Meaning that there was an intuition in you that kind of guided your inner compass, so to speak, to say, certain things seem wrong and certain things seem right, and I want to be able to communicate that in as articulate, clear, concrete, and impactful way as I can, and manifest it in the world so that other people are benefiting from it. But at the same time, if you feel like you're the only person who has that intuition, in the process of articulating, communicating, and manifesting it, our natural human tendency would be to doubt ourselves. Maybe I'm just the odd one out. Right. Maybe I'm just crazy. I don't know. But then you are able to get to a community where you have people who share this sort of intuition. And they may have different ways of talking about it. They may have different ways of articulating it. They may have different ways of manifesting it. But they all come from the same source of intuition. The sense that, oh, there's something here. This doesn't seem right. This seems right. And the way in which all of you together are able to come to a same space and connect through that shared purpose or sense of mission now gives you the courage to go back to your own natural habitat and work even more on your craft to be able to articulate your intuition in the way is true to you, because it'll be different from everybody, and able to sustain a very difficult journey that you're on, despite the fact that there are times in which we doubt ourselves and experience setbacks and not seeing enough impact. Is that the journey that you're describing?
Yeah. And the decision that I decided to be a patient advocate came naturally because I attended that conference and I was able to experience that camaraderie, that there are people like me who care about patient safety. In fact, there are lots of people. I just felt I just couldn't find them.
Yes.
Or I couldn't find my tribe that I can just talk and laugh and be like family together. There is this hierarchy called Maslow's hierarchy. So at the very bottom, you need the very basics of food, shelter, and all this. But the second level is the safety. And if you think about healthcare, we take care of very bottom. We're very busy with taking care of very bottom. Safety, not so much. We're not there yet, in my opinion. But it was interesting because I was listening to a podcast of Simon Sinek. He said he doesn't agree with Maslow's hierarchy, and he said before safety, he said he thinks you need communities. So, and I thought about that, and I think I agree with that. You need. Maybe it's at the same level as safety. You need communities to feel safe.
It almost sounds like one's the means to the other end. Like you feel safe because you have a community.
Yeah.
So it's not that like they're mutually exclusive. It's just that one's a means to another end. If you're alone, like what you were saying earlier, if you're alone, in the wilderness, like it'd be very difficult to feel safe. But the moment you have people who are supporting you, protecting you, and you're feeling less alone and together and more powerful, so to speak, then safety in some ways naturally arrives, it seems. So for people who are listening, who may be also struggling to empathize with patients or healthcare workers, what are some things that really helped you move from a place where you're having difficulty empathizing with them to empathizing with them?
I feel a lot of times that I struggled were when I was feeling alone. And it's a weird feeling when you're surrounded by so many people, you feel alone.
Yeah.
When you're in a family or people, you feel alone. And I'm sure many people experience this. But what I realize is when you're alone, I know it is so easy to just curl up and close. But when you open up, the magic happens. I know it is very difficult for those times. But I learned that is the only way I feel that you can heal, get connected. We live with relationships. We live by it, I feel. And when you don't open up and you lack those things, you're punishing yourself even more.
In what sense, punishing?
Like being able to empathize is allowing another person to feel is needed too.
Not just feeling other people.
Right. Yeah. And that way you are connected. And I feel empathy is making connections.
Right. Just to make sure I understand. So typically people think of empathy as, now I'm going to feel other people's feelings. You're saying is that's only half of it. The other half is letting other people feel your feelings too. Right. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I recently read a quote saying life is like a parachute. So if you don't open up.
Oh, I love that. Oh my God. Wow, I did not expect that at all. So, it's like a parachute. You don't open up. Oh my God. I don't think I've ever heard that metaphor before.
Yeah.
Oh, whoa. That is, okay. Sorry, completely taken by surprise. Sorry to interrupt you. Keep going. I'm an idiot. Wow.
So I think that's a great metaphor to remember.
In some ways, it's similar to what you were describing this whole time. So when you're talking about your experience in high school, deep down, maybe you had a longing for community, but given the circumstances and situations, like all the work that you had to do, all the studying you had to do, and all the adapting you had to do, given all those things that you had to do, you were in a place where you had to reprioritize your life to put community second and everything else first. And in doing so, one would imagine that it would be natural for you to want to keep things inside. Because there's, not only is there nobody else to really share it with, doesn't seem very important at the moment because there are other things to get done. Right? But then it sounds like throughout your journey, it's been a very difficult journey. It's something that nobody wishes upon anybody. It involves a loss of somebody you love and a very difficult grieving process. At the same time, in hindsight, what you're also suggesting is through that difficult and painful journey, the thing that you learned is to open up about the difficulty, about the struggles that you experienced, about the pain, about the anger. And in the beginning, you were feeling a little self-doubt about maybe I'm just the only one who's feeling this. But you got to a point where you are now part of a community where many people who are in similar situations, who've experienced similar things, were able to connect with you because you were willing to open up. Because you are no longer simply stuck in the one-dimensional world of empathy where you feel like, I have to do everything. I just have to work, and care. That's the only way to empathy. And you're saying, no, that's important, but that's only half of the equation. The other half of the equation is me also feeling heard, me also feeling understood, me also feeling appreciated, acknowledged, that my work matters to the world among your peers. And that makes it a bit of a reciprocal kind of a virtuous cycle that makes it possible for you to sustain and keep on this journey. Is that right?
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay.
Right.
What emotions do you feel in this moment?
Feel relieved. I think you have great ways to putting things into perspectives, and I think you have great level of understanding, listening, and it gave me, when you sent me those questions, it gave me time to reflect on. So I'm very grateful that you reached out to me, and it gave me a realization that I was judging others for lacking empathy. Although I call myself as empathy enthusiast. It's very easy to do that, I realized, and it was pretty profound moments. I'm very grateful to you.
Would you be willing to say a little bit more what part of it was profound for you?
That although I advocate for empathy, that I'm labeling other people and not empathizing with what they're going through. They may have possible struggles that as I used to, and as I did before, and I just judge by what they do and how they act. And you mentioned it in the beginning very well, that some people may never have this realization. Yeah, and I never really thought about it that way.
I'm glad that you were open to reflecting.
Yeah, like I said, I realized I had to be open to learn and to grow. If I don't open up, it's not going to let me grow. It's going to just stop or even kill me. So I know it's easier said than being done, but opening up is the key, I feel. And sometimes when you open up and when the other person is not ready to receive that,
Yeah, they're like, TMI.
right, then it becomes difficult. But when that's the case, and I think, I don't know how to, I don't think I would know how to act, but be vulnerable and you're not received well, then I don't know.
No, it can hurt. It can be
hurt
even
very
more
well.
isolating. Yeah.
Right.
So how would you go about opening?
I sought out like-minded people. I think that's the key. Your voice becomes so much bigger and louder when you are meeting with like-minded people. Just kind of like you typed empathy and you found me. You have to seek out, I feel, until you do that and you can meet other people that way, you may struggle.
Yeah.
I know some people, or many people, are against social media. I feel you can use it to your advantage in many different ways. It's not just negative aspects that social media has. There's just a lot of different things that can be positive. With the COVID, it's even more difficult to have face-to-face interaction with other people. I feel social media and like Zoom, like this, is a viable option. You have to make an effort. You have to put work to meet the people you belong to. Like we said, marriage. Like,
that's right. Got to go out and have dates. Have
right?
awkward conversations.
Would you just wait in your room until
Poof! No, that's a very, very good point. It's very good. Once again, Soojin, thank you so much for your willingness to share such an honest and sincere story. It was not something that was easy to talk about. And I think not just myself, but everybody watching was able to viscerally feel that. So that I'm just even more grateful and appreciative of the fact that you had accepted my invitation to talk about such a difficult subject. And such great
Yeah,
lengths.
and I'm grateful for your curiosity and your willingness to listen to my story. I'm really grateful for the opportunity and honored that I was part of your project.
Thank you very much. And until next time, may you stay beautiful. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey there, listener. Thank you for listening to the very end. I believe we can mature and innovate by navigating the difficult journey of realizing empathy in the face of tension. What I've learned from my own experience is that all of our challenges in empathizing with others is ultimately an opportunity to realize empathy with ourselves, to develop a greater understanding and appreciation of who we are and who we can be when we feel connected. And this journey is difficult. Let's not sugarcoat it. This is especially so if you go at it alone. So I envision a world where each and every one of us, from the moment we're born until the day we die, can feel certain there's at least one person we can reach out to at any given moment who can and will support us in this journey in a way that actually makes us feel supported. If you share this belief, please subscribe to our YouTube and podcast channels, and also like and share this episode, as well as leave a review of our podcast so more people can enjoy it. And if you believe you know somebody who can be a great guest for our show, please send us email at podcast@realizingempathy.com. We absolutely love hearing from you. Thank you once again, and until next time, may you stay beautiful.
Before I was a pharmacist, I wouldn't have had any idea about what pharmacists really go through and do at their jobs. And I would only think about, like, why aren't they doing this?
That is Soojin Jun, the guest for today's episode. In today's episode, you'll hear Soojin share the story of when she struggled to empathize with a healthcare worker tending to her ailing